Hi guys, so here we are in another dramatic political climate in Zimbabwe, and for all you know, Zimbabwe is not new to transitional drama. No one wants to leave power. It's like a political culture that is embedded within Zimbabwean blood. No one wants to leave power. And I'm talking about power as a whole complex. I'm not talking about power only in the terms of political power. Even churches, even bishops, they'll never want to have any transitional decisions. They'd rather die before they do that. It's called a political culture. But anyway, if you're Zimbabwean, please make a comment. Let us know where you're watching us from, and also let us know each other. It's important that we get to know each other, we talk. Like I said before, the courts are the last hope for a common man. It's a place where you find lasting peace and solutions. So Nelson Chamisa, who is the #1 opposition leader, is entangled with the ruling party over, the election that happened. This time around, his approaching of the courts look rather promising. But I'm not surprised that this is happening. It gives me a nostalgic feeling because in 2018, this also happened again. Now, we have to take you through some developments, and I'm telling you this because there is a bit of a chance that can lead to Nelson Chamisa winning this election, but it comes from a common ground. Okay, let me explain this a bit. You see, Zimbabweans are good at dividing themselves at the cities, really, and it's caused by politicians. One thing that people should understand is the politicians are just like the lawyers, are just like the businessmen. They are utilizing power to earn a living. And do you know who is susceptible to their actions? Do you know who is a victim of the actions of politicians? It's the normal, common man. You see, Nelson Chamisa, even if he loses the election, he can still pay his children's school fees, and they can go to private schools. I'm pretty sure his children are in a private school. Obviously, ZANU-PF is in power. They can sell the gold, they can get something out of it. And you know who suffers the most after these political parties do whatever they do to change the livelihood of its people? It's the normal, common man. So, at the end of the day, whether you are Party A or you're Party B, or whether you're party green or you're party yellow or you're party red, at the end of the day, it's you and I who are going to suffer from bad policies of a government that doesn't care for the people. Either way, you are going to suffer. So there has to be what they call the common ground, where we all agree to say, you know what, this is what the people need in a country. So at the end of the day, regardless of political outfits and affiliations, people need to belong in a certain cause of a nation, which means I need to be fed, I need to be well clothed, I need to be sheltered. That is what should drive our political positions, regardless of who is yellow or green. That's what Zimbabweans lack. So at the end of the day, when an election comes, people just look at the outcome, then they go about their lives. They don't look at those who have nothing to eat or who have nothing to clothe, which is something that is very common in Zimbabwe. But enough of that. In this video, I want to uncover how the Zimbabwean government used its power to influence the results of 2023 in what they scientifically call rigging, where you can check our previous videos. We've covered the Zimbabwean problem for a long time. So Nelson Chamisa is fighting so hard that he overturns the results of the elections that were announced by Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, ZAC. So now he is in a tussle with the government of the day. I am going to cover in this video how Nelson Chamisa also has to protect. But it's not only Nelson Chamisa. I'm going to cover why both you and I, or maybe it's not both, all of us can help to defend the vote that is the voice of the people. So for anyone who has been following the Zimbabwean political scene, you agree with me that Robert Mugabe was an expert in rigging. But clearly this new government has learned nothing from Robert. Compared to some of the election periods and episodes in history, the one this time has been a bit amateurish. So you see, rigging in simple terms is cheating to manipulate the outcome of the election results. But it doesn't mean you have to be in the ballot for you to change the will of the people. This has nothing to do with Africans. For those who want to blame Africans for disorder, it's a common cause, it's a common thing. So democracy is flawed. Now, if you're watching us for the first time, please do subscribe and ring the notification bell, and don't forget to comment. The comments are very important because they give us, the outlook of how our content is reaching out people, and also how you feel, so that we can make more content like this, or we can make ourselves better. So how did the ZANU-PF rig the election? First, you need to understand that they first rigged the election the moment they stole, or they won, or they did whatever you want to call it in the 2018 election. They started rigging. They were more proactive than before. So you know that Chamisa was under the MDCA, which was an alliance of opposition parties that united against Mugabe. But then after the coup against Mugabe, they were now against Emerson. So to prepare the ground for rigging, ZANU approached the key members of the opposition on a spree of what they called crossing the floor, whereby then the MDCA, which are the people who served in the previous party that Chamisa used to lead, were on a rampage to join ZANU-PF. But this was not rigging. It was just part of the plan to get to the 2023 plebiscite. So stay with me. By doing this, they wanted to create an impression that even the politicians do not see opposition as a suitable alternative government for the Zimbabwean people. So this was to prepare the mind that 2023 were going to win, because most of these leaders did not see Nelson Chamisa as the better alternative person to lead the country. So the Zimbabwean courts were also used to dismantle the legacy of opposition in Zimbabwe by trying to use the litigation between its puppets with Chamisa, so that Chamisa can be termed an illegitimate leader of the MDCA, which he belonged to back then, or he used to lead. So then we have people who are like Douglas Monzora, who came in, because the MDCA was led by the former Prime Minister of Zimbabwe, Morgan Tsvangirai. Then when he died, Chamisa took over power in an unconstitutional means. This one we need to agree. Chamisa, when he took the power from Morgan Tsvangirai, that was unconstitutional. But he was popular. So the likes of Douglas Monzora and Thokozani Kupe and also other people who were within the party, they realized that this was not the right way to ascend into power. ZANU-PF paid these people who felt disgruntled with Nelson Chamisa, and they caused confusion within the party until they opened court cases, which led to Nelson Chamisa being left without a party. Even his headquarters of the party were repossessed. Now, listen carefully. In this court ruling, Douglas Monzora became president of the main opposition party. So he used his power to remove members of parliament who did not submit to the new setting of him being the president of the alliance. So more than 20 MPs were recalled. But just like old times, ZANU made a mistake, and Nelson even launched his CCC. It became popular than the MDCA. But ZANU did not stop there. They opened a war chest that was, I think, the most expensive war chest of an election ever recorded in history. So if you remember, on the 6th of April, Al Jazeera launched part 3 of what they called the Gold Mafia Tritology, which exposed that the president had a 240 million US dollar budget for an election. And for those who think, in case you want to think, you might realize that 240 million US dollars is not a small amount of money to just use for an election, because an election is just a democratic process. You just present what you were doing for the people, especially for the sitting president. Obviously, he has an upper hand. He will just come and say, I have built 1, 2, 3. I've done 1, 2, 3. I've given you enough to not be starved. And then you win the election. But for 240 million, I'm pretty sure it seems overpriced. And beside that, the countless evidence of vote buying has always been very, very prominent. in ZANU-PF, and it goes against Section 136, subsection 1 of the Electoral Act that says anyone who engages in vote buying is usually imprisoned on a level 7, I think. But ZANU-PF also used its ability to discharge violence on its opposition. Many attacks were reported and some events were even cancelled. But then here comes the most interesting part of this story. There is an organization that was formed called FAZ, which means Forever Associate Zimbabwe. And that's it. That's its meaning. It's simply an NGO which is an affiliate of ZANU-PF, and the constitution of FAZ is like a non-governmental organization. I'm sorry, but I mean it's a government-owned non-governmental organization that campaigns on behalf of ZANU. They text, they call, they approach. So let me try to explain this. So if FAZ, which is Forever Associate Zimbabwe, was approaching the people, was able to gather the data of the people, it then means that according to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission's Electoral Act, the ZANU-PF as a political party is not allowed to do some certain activities during the election date or the day of casting the votes, which means that an organization like any other international or a national organization that is within Zimbabwe can be able to approach the voters, because it's not governed by the Zimbabwe Electoral Act. It's governed by the PVO, or the Private Voluntary Organization Act, which allows organizations to be able to have one-on-one interaction with the people. Therefore, if you go to the court and say, we saw FAZ putting on desks on the day of the election, they will say it has nothing to do with the Electoral Act, because it's not the one that governs FAZ. FAZ is governed by the PVO Act. If you get where I'm coming from. All the NGOs that are able to collect data, to contact the people, to have one-on-one interaction, to knock on the door, to do whatever they can do. So they use the PVO Act to insulate themselves against the Electoral Act. Now, when FAZ entered to do the dirty work, it had an extensive mandate, which was to be on the ground. They used the following tactics. So FAZ used institutionalized intimidation, So, as you know, that ZANU-PF holds a great deal of the rural population. So it uses what they call the tribal chiefs, or, what they formerly knew as kings back in the days, but they call them tribal chiefs. And these are the instrument for summoning villagers into villages or into voting. So unlike the urban voters, the voting in the rural areas is not an option. Every person has to be a voter, and it's by command. Hence, traditional chiefs play a major role in gathering their portions in the community to organize meetings and the voting strategies. So imagine Harare alone, which is an urban area, the capital city, lost 700,000 voters who were disgruntled and gave up on their democratic rights. But now you must be asking, how does ZANU-PF keep the rural vote very, very, very high and the urban vote very low? So the first thing they do is they give the chiefs brand new cars each and every election season, so that they can give them some energy to gather more people and vote for ZANU-PF. The second thing that ZANU-PF used this time was voter apathy through electoral confusion. So in Zimbabwe, by nature, people have given up on elections. Since then, we knew that ZANU-PF will always emerge as the winner. So in urban areas, because they realized that Chamisa had galvanized, he had gathered the people to come and vote in their numbers, that even the number of the registered voters this year was higher than any other election recorded before. They delayed the voting to later hours of the day. And this caused a lot of people to abandon their polling stations, and they went back home because people complained about the way the election was conducted. Likewise, the president came as a knight in a shining armor and saved the day, and he extended the voting period to another extra day, which is where the opposition made the biggest mistake, because the longer it takes for you to manage the election, the more your concentration span on what's happening is lost. The question that people have is that we have the country's well-educated populace seeking opportunities globally. And this is a statement to show that the president has failed them and the government has failed them. And as much as we want to agree to the fact that people are seeking refuge and going to the UK, going to South Africa, going to different places to seek refuge, it's a globalized community, I understand, but I feel like home is always best. And most of the people that you see are angry on the internet. They're angry because all their pains, all their suffering is just to go back home in a functional society, in a functional economy. But someone is sitting on that possibility. And that person is the president. And if he ever sees this video one day, he has to know that the youth are saying thank you for the lost opportunities that people have faced in this country called Zimbabwe. No one is happy, and it's time that people tell him the real truth about the suffering of the people. And this is not offense to anyone, but truly, if you're suffering, you just express yourself. Until next time, please don't forget to comment, subscribe, and like this video. Next time.